Hi Year 6, hope you had a good weekend. I'm here to read you the last part of the story of Journey to Joburg. So the last time we read the story, they'd left their little sister in the hospital, so let's see what happens, okay? Waiting is this chapter. It was usually a good time for the children when Mama was at home. First there would be the excitement of waiting for her to arrive, and then the flurry of greetings for her to arrive, and then the flurry of greetings, hugs and news. Later Mama would open her case and bring out the presents she had been saving for the family. On her day off in the city, she sometimes went to jumble sales to buy the clothes white people no longer wanted. Then would follow the pleasure of days when Mama would be around the house, helping Nono with the work or playing with Dino, and always ready to listen to the children's stories about what they had been doing. But this time was different, like the time when Mama came just after Rara died. The 3 days of waiting before Mama had to return to hospital passed slowly. The grown-ups didn't speak of their worst fear, although Naledi saw the heavy, worried look in their eyes. Each morning, Tira asked Mama how much longer it was until she had to collect Dino. Then after he had helped bring the water, he would go off to play for short periods. But Naledi preferred to stay all the while at home with Mama. On the 4th day, Mama set off very early alone. She had borrowed just enough money from a neighbour to pay for her bus fare to and from the hospital. That day seemed to pass even more slowly. Tiro stayed right outside the house, fiddling with a piece of wire, changing its shape many times, then using it to draw in the sand. When Naledi wasn't busy, she came and sat on the doorstep, gazing out at the road. She forced her mind to stay blank, just searching the distance for any figures coming from the direction of the big road, where the bus would be, what would stop. She didn't want to think about what was happening in the hospital because it would bring back the picture of the plastic bag. From time to time, Naledi would see the vague shape of a woman appear with a baby wrapped to her back, but as she came closer, Naledi would see it wasn't Mama. It was late in the afternoon when at last there was a figure which really did seem to be Mama. So imagine there's been a lot of anxiety at this point, and finally this might be her mother. What do you think would have happened? Naledi called out to Nono, who was in the house, and she and Tiro began racing up the dusty road. "It's Mama, it is!" Tiro shouted as they ran. Dino's on her back, Naledi panted. As the two children came sprinting towards her, Mama stopped and turned a little so they could see their little sister. As the children greeted her, she gave a shy smile, resting her head on Mama's shoulder. "She's still quite weak, but her fever has gone," said Mama. When Naledi and Tiro either side of her, Mama walked on to the house. Mangwane came up the road, calling out in delight. Nono remained at the door, holding to the side for support. "My child," she whispered as she put out her hand to touch Dino's head. Right, so lot of sense of relief and happiness that their younger sister seems to be a lot better, even though she's weak. The fear of her dying hasn't happened. So yeah, so that's something that must have been a huge relief for the whole family. Now we're going to read, this is the very final chapter, and it's called Hope. So it should give you a kind of ending, a tone to the ending, an idea of what it's going to be like. That night, the children found it hard to get to sleep. Mama had to return to the city the next morning, as each day she was losing pay. Do you remember when the woman had said that if she doesn't come back, she's going to find someone else? So obviously the poor mother has to now go back, and she hasn't even had time to spend with her family. There was all the borrowed money to pay back now, as well as the food to send Nono each month for food, school, and all the other expenses. Mama was clearly worried about Dino not getting enough milk. The nurse had repeated what the doctor had told Mama about Dino needing milk, fruit, and vegetables. "But we work very hard and earn very little," Mama had said with a sigh. Sorry, she said it with a sigh. "But we work very hard and earn very little," Mama had said with a sigh as she cuddled Dino before putting her down to sleep. Tiro had said good night, but lay thinking about the boy on the orange farm. He wondered if he himself was old enough to go and find work, but he knew Mama wouldn't agree. Hadn't she said the children working on the farm should be in school? Then he thought about Dumi and the bit in the letter about studying in another country. Studying what? Tiro wondered. He would ask Naledi tomorrow. Tomorrow he would also remake his wire car and try out Jonas and Paul's design. Putting out his arm, he touched Dino. It was lovely knowing she was there again. If only Mama didn't have to go away now. Naledi lay awake too, listening to the murmuring voices of Nono, Mangwane and Mama. It was so comforting to hear them all together, but tomorrow night Mama's voice would be missing. Naledi buried her head in her arms, forcing back her tears. Crying wouldn't help. She couldn't imagine Grace crying, and Grace had to look after her young brothers and the house all by herself most of the time. Yet Grace had said things in a way that made you feel better, like what she had said. We're pushed all over the place, but it won't be like that forever. Like when she had said, we're pushed all over the place, but it won't be like that forever. But when would they see Grace again? It occurred to Naledi that at least they could write to each other. Tomorrow she must ask Mama to find out Grace's address. Then a new idea came to her. Wasn't it possible that in her own school there would be people like Grace? Naledi had overheard bits of conversation amongst the older students, although she had never taken much notice before. But why shouldn't she begin to talk to them and become friends, even if she were a little younger? If they heard she had been to Johannesburg, they would be interested, she was sure. What was it Mama had said about the children in Soweto? That they didn't want to learn just to be servants? Oh yes, they were right. All of a sudden, lying there in the dark, it became so clear to Naledi. It wasn't just their schools they were talking about, it was her school too. All those lessons on writing letters for jobs as servants, always writing how good they were at cooking, cleaning, washing, gardening, always ending with yours obediently. Naledi had never thought about it before tonight. But never had she written about wanting to be, say, a doctor. Yes, that's what she'd like to do. Imagine how useful it would be if she became a doctor, especially in their own village. She could even look after her own family. For a few moments, Naledi lay imagining herself in a long white coat, in a bright white room with shining cupboards all around her, like the cupboards where Mama worked. Then something jarred. She saw in her mind someone bringing her a little baby. The mother looked like the young woman in the queue at the hospital, and the baby was so thin that its little ribs pushed up from under its skin. The mother was clearly poor and had no food for her child. Where would she, the doctor, get food for the baby? When she opened her shining cupboards, they were empty. Naledi then began to imagine a whole line of mothers and grandmothers bringing weak, thin little babies up to her. What could she do? For a while, she felt the tears pressing onto her eyelids again. No, she wouldn't give in to tears. It was just that she couldn't work this all out by herself. Well, school would be starting again in a week. That wasn't long. At break time, she would just go where the older students usually sat chatting. Just wait till they heard where she and Ntira had been. Naledi turned over and stroked Dinio's cheek, making her sister smile a little in her sleep. How strange, thought Naledi. If Dinio hadn't been so terribly ill, she and Ntira would never have made the journey to get Mama. It had saved Dinio, she was sure, but also through this journey she had begun to find out so much. The grown-up voices had stopped, and Naledi heard Mama blow out the lamp and quietly shift into bed. Naledi's eyes were heavy and she felt sleep pulling at her. She fell asleep at last, picturing her first day back at school, surrounded by friends, old and new. Okay, so that is the end of a story. It ended on a happy note, so that's really great. I think, a lot of us like stories that do end up on a happy note. It ended up on a very positive note with the message of hope, that Naledi herself felt that she could make some kind of a change. She didn't have all the answers at the time, but she had held on to hope. And there were many people like that at the time who lived during apartheid, who held on to hope, who wanted change and fought for change and did their own things, whatever they could within their capacity. So whether it was to go on marches and demonstrations, someone like Nelson Mandela, who sacrificed many years of his life in prison to highlight the injustice, or people like Naledi, who probably dreamt of becoming doctors and tried to get themselves educated to change their family status, and also the people that did sort of try and keep it going for their families despite the circumstances, like Mama. Everyone paid their part to help the people at the time in their own way. And I just want you to think about what are some of the key lessons that you learned from this story. What are some of the things? How does life compare, and what we have to what they had? And why is it so important for us to maintain those kind of rights that human rights, and why are those rights that you learnt about in school, the children's rights, for instance, why are they really important? Unfortunately, many parts of the world, children don't have right to food, to clean water and other things. So it's not something that's just finished and we think, okay, apartheid is finished and we don't have to worry. There are other parts of the world where there are injustices, where there's starvation and poverty, which all affect people's lives. So perhaps think about how you could make that little bit of a difference and become someone who is more aware of what's happening in the world and your place in it. So I'll see you again when I next read a story. I hope you are all well. I miss you all very much. Take care. Bye.